morning. Am I speaking correctly? It looks like yes. Good morning. It's 9:07 a.m. on Sunday, May 17th, 2020. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I've been trying not to get up for a little while, but here I am, and this is 5 more minutes. Because it's Sunday, I am continuing my rewatch of The Legend of Korra with episode 7, The Aftermath. And this episode is primarily designed to do two things. One is subvert our expectations by, we had such a big, dramatic, plot turning episode last time, and we might expect a more low key, somber episode this time, only to have it continue to, crank those gears, making things even worse than before. But the second thing that this is intended to do is basically be a big half-hour sales pitch for Asami as being awesome. I think that, and I recall that when this show was originally new, there was a lot of fan dislike for Asami initially because, of course, she's in Korra's way. Korra likes Mako, but then Mako's with this other girl, and Asami's the other woman, right? This idea, but this is the episode where it turns, and we're like, oh yeah, okay, Asami's pretty awesome. And without going into too much detail about spoiler stuff, I feel like one of the big revelations of the tail end of the last season, people feel like, there was no indications that any of that was coming. I'm feeling like, watch this episode again. Those who have seen it know what I'm talking about, and those who are spoiler free, hopefully maybe you'll guess, and maybe you'll be right. You'll have to watch and see. But in any event, I just feel like I always bought that reveal, and I feel like this episode sort of bears that out. I feel like there's always been a cool relationship. Well, you know what? I'm not going to be coy with it. I feel like I go back and forth on this question every week. Yeah, so the fact that Korra and Asami end up together, I feel like I don't know from the authors. Actually, I haven't read an interview about what because I suspect they did not actually intend it all along. So like when they wrote this episode, it wasn't about like, oh, well, we have a plan that, 3 seasons from now, we're gonna have it slow burn until then. But I have a feeling that it came about sooner than writing that last season. But primarily what they wanted to do is just have this really cool kind of friend relationship there. But what they ended up doing was just writing a relationship that frankly had way more chemistry than any of the other ones that Korra ever gets involved with, which, it's like, oh, that's how it goes sometimes. In any event, let's talk about what happens in this episode. So, the we finished last time, biggest attack on the pro bending arena and everything, and so now we begin this episode, instead of like with the newsreel, it's like similar imagery, but we're hearing a speech from Tarlok basically saying Lin Beifong screwed up. She said she could guarantee the safety and she failed. And the thing is, we don't really like him for saying so, but he's not wrong, right? I mean, Lin they were gonna cancel it, and Lin specifically came in and said, no, I can take care of it. I'm good. I personally guarantee that it'll be fine. And it was not fine, right? I mean, so I don't think we blame her too much necessarily. I mean, this was clearly an assault of a different character than she had reason to believe was going to happen. But at the same time, I mean, it was her job and to protect people, and she pretty much utterly failed. And so they're still trying, everyone's still trying to figure out, like, okay, what are the next steps? And so one thing we learn is that they're closing the arena now, after the fact. And that even means that Mako and Bolin, who had been living there, have to move out. And so Korra comes to tell them that they're invited to come live at Air Temple Island, but they have already been invited by Asami to come and live at her house. And we learn later, actually, that she didn't actually ask her dad about it. She was basically planning to, just make it happen and then get him to agree to let him stay. Oh, the thing on my lip. But in any event, I think at this point we're still being set up a little bit like, oh yeah, Asami, she is, cramping Korra's style. But what we also have here is the security force with all the metal benders raid Cabbage Corp, which is a technology company in this, and it has in front of the big factory, it has a statue of the cabbages. Oh no, my cabbages guy from Avatar, which is kind of amazing. But apparently, a bunch of equalist stuff there in the factory, and I think we are intended to feel like, that seems a little too easy. But at the same time, hey, we shut down that company because it seems obvious that there's a bunch of stuff there. What's going on? And then, as part of this, we also catch up with Tano, the leader of the Wolfbats, who certainly very humbled now. We learn he's been all over the place to different healers to try to get his bending restored, and nobody can figure out what happened or fix it. And at this point, all of his bravado gone, he just looks Korra in the eye and says, "You got to get him for me." And she just sort of solemnly nods. And so we're establishing here, the next stage of what we believe to be the thing, which is going to be continuing to try to hunt down Amon, right? And at this point, let's see, we get our first reminder of Hiroshi Sato here, seeing that he seems to be cooperating with the investigation. And he demands the equalists must pay for what they've done, and all that. But this is where we kick into what the episode's really about, which is, let's get to know that Asami's actually pretty cool. So Korra does visit Mako and Bolin at Asami's house. They're all playing around in the swimming pool. We see Bolin abusing the services of the butler there in the house, like doing things like making the butler dry him off as he gets out of the pool, only to immediately jump back into the pool. One note there is that there is a shot of Bolin as he comes out of the pool in his bathing suit and he's like posing to get dried off, that I'm feeling like he looks about 80 pounds more muscular than at any other point in the show. Now, I don't know if that's maybe just meant to suggest that he is actually always that beefy and just kind of usually wears clothes that don't highlight that, but I feel like there's a little bit of an animation issue there. I just mean he looks way bigger in that bit than at any other time in the series, I think. So anyway, just kind of couldn't help but notice that. But in any event, there's Korra. She's trying to play nice. She's, wants to be happy for her friends, even though she's still feeling a little bit jealous. But at this point, let's see. I'm trying to just I'm reading the wiki just to kind of remind myself what order things happen in. Yeah, so I think so it is still at that point where Korra is like, okay, well, so what else is going on here? And this is where Asami shows her the Satomobile racing track that they've got on the grounds, and we establish Asami race car driver. And she also we have a really neat race sequence where the Korra's in the passenger seat as Asami's racing this race car around against the other driver, and it's just kind of like, yeah, okay. And it's pretty awesome. Korra enjoys that, and then Asami also sets up that she's learned how to do lots of things, including self defense. She can take care of herself. But as everything this day is finishing up, uh, Korra has gone off to use the bathroom and overhears a conversation with Hiroshi Sato, it's very ominous, and he's saying, uh, the investigation of Cabbage Corp has bought them time, but he's getting ready to strike, and it obviously sounds really bad. Korra excuses herself, comes back with Lin and Tenzin, and that does not go well, because on the one hand, he has what actually sounds like a pretty reasonable explanation, which is to say, Cabbage Corp was my... Hear me, I'm Freudian slipping the actual joke they're making. Cabbage Corp is his competition, and if they're being closed, then he's prepared to strike the market. And the thing is that for someone inclined to not believe Korra, that sounds very rational and a very completely normal explanation. But I think we, the audience, are meant to be on Korra's side here. It did seem suspicious, and his explanation doesn't really ring true. And what's really nice about it is, even though Korra, or Tenzin and Lin didn't hear what Korra heard, they don't dismiss her at this point. Like in a lesser show, this is the point where the authority figures would just say, "Oh, come on, Korra, are you sure you heard what you heard? It sounds like he's cool. So what's the problem?" And so that, I think that's what would happen in a lesser show. But in this one, they're more like, "Korra, are you sure? If you're sure, then yes, we're proceeding. And so, Hiroshi, if you are volunteering to let us inspect all of your factories, then yes, we are absolutely intending to do that." But in the midst of all of this, of course, is Asami, and Mako, on Asami's behalf, incredibly offended that Korra would believe that Asami's father has anything to do with this. Asami can't believe that's possibly true. She's angry. And then Mako is mad that Korra is making his girlfriend mad, and is sort of making all of these accusations against the guy who sponsored this team and gave him all these uniforms and offered a place to live and is his girlfriend's dad, and all of that sort of thing. So Mako's really mad. Asami's really mad. Although at this point in the episode, I think we're still left, we don't know exactly what's going on. Like, is Hiroshi Sato really involved? And if so, what's Asami's deal? I mean, her protestations seem genuine, but we don't really know. In any event, they inspect all the factories and don't find anything. But Korra receives a secret note saying, "Oh, there's a secret factory under the house." And this is where we start to see the cracks, because they come to inspect that. There's the secret tunnel under the house that Lin finds by, she actually, like, her boots, she can metal bend the metal away from the bottom of the boots, leaving her barefoot, and then she does the seismic stomp thing that Toph used to do, which is cool, and senses there's the tunnel there. And when we see Asami genuinely surprised there, I think at this point we buy that she didn't know. She is confused and alarmed that there seems to be a tunnel that she didn't know about there, and that they found it in connection with this investigation. And, this just doesn't seem right, but she doesn't know how, she has no other explanation. But what we learn, of course, is that this was all a setup. Hiroshi arranged for them to get to this note so that he could lead them there, so that he could essentially strike by attacking and killing the leadership of this task force, and does his best to capture, it does seem like capture alive is the goal there, Korra and Tenzin and Lin Beifong and their entire security force. And so because they've got these giant mecha tanks that are very cool and designed to be extremely dangerous weapons for use against all of the actual strength that the security force is used to dishing out. It's an anti-bender tank, and uh, and it's effective, right? Like it defeats all of them. And honestly, you know, if everyone had gone down at once, it would have taken out all of them. It was really only worked out because Mako and Bolin and Asami, asked to wait behind, decide to not wait. And I want to just give a brief shout out, of course, to the hilarious little con that the brothers play on the officer sent left to watch them, because it's so obviously reminiscent of their time as street urchins. This little thing where Mako's like, "Oh no, I have to sneeze! I have to sneeze!" And then he sneezes fire to make the guy sort of back up. And in the meantime, Bolin has raised up a little step behind him with earthbending to trip him and make him fall over. And then they tie him up. And it's like, yeah! And it's fun watching that too, especially just like rewatching it when you are remembering what is about to happen, and you see them kind of look at each other. You see Bolin in the background like, "Oh, don't pay attention to me. I'm not doing anything." And you can see the whole thing orchestrated. It's beautiful. It's a nice, beautiful little bit of animation there. But anyway, they pursue, and fortunately, because everyone else had been defeated already, Hiroshi Sato has come out of the tank. And at this point, you know, Mako and Bolin show up first. They challenge him, and this is where, Sato feels like, well, all the cards are on the table now. Might as well just admit everything. And the one minor quibble that I have with this is we're starting to have a lot of characters with the backstory of a firebender killed their family. Okay, Mako and Bolin, their parents were killed by a firebender. Amon has his backstory that his parents were killed by a firebender, and now Hiroshi Sato, lost his wife to a firebender attack, and it's like, all right, come on. I mean, we get it as a motivation, but it's starting to feel like it's a lot, though, and it's always a firebender, which I get in the sense that it sounds immediately scary, but I can't help but wonder, like, was there thought that kind of went into that, or I'm not sure what's intended to be shown there really. But in any event, that's a minor quibble. What we really have though is him finally dropping all the subterfuge and saying, yeah, I think that it is time to take the world back from the Benders. And the worst part about having to keep up this facade was having to watch my daughter run around with firebending street trash like you. And it's like, and just in time for Asami to finally arrive. Presumably she stayed back because Mako and Bolin told her to, but she comes in and he gives her the impassioned speech of like, I wanted to keep you out of this as long as possible, but now that you know, I want you to join me. Help me to take back the world from the Benders who are ruining everything, who took your mother away from us. Join me, and does the whole Darth Vader thing, offers her one of the electrified gloves, and they build up the suspense of the moment where she's clearly, feeling conflicted. She takes one of the gloves, and it was like, oh no, is Asami going to be a bad guy too? But no, she zaps her father, cementing her status as being an awesome good guy, and defeats the lieutenant briefly long enough to allow the escape of Mako and Bolin and Korra and Tenzin and Lin that are all sort of minorly recovered so far. Like, it's a little convenient, but it's fine, because of course Mako and Bolin had gotten several of the of their unconscious buddies dragged over just in time. It's fine, but the point is that they escape, but many of the other Metalbender security guards, police force, Lin's men had stayed captured, which is not good. So we finished the episode with kind of another somber reflection of what's going on. This is the second time in a row with the slightly Empire Strikes Back style ending. Where Well, obviously we're not staying at the Sato mansion anymore, so uh, although actually, I suppose Asami wouldn't want to stay there. I was just thinking, it's like even. Oh, actually, I take it back because I was about to say, it's like even if Sato is arrested, I'm like, but he's not. He won that fight. They just got away. So in any event, um, asks Korra, can we still stay at Air Temple Island? And of course, the answer is yes. And there's a nice moment there where Korra, knowing that she has to set aside some of her previous emotions about all of this, understanding that Asami has just taken their side at great personal cost, and that she's got to be feeling very confused and upset, and maybe even a little ashamed right now, and that she needs support. And so, uh, you know, of course, she's willing. She's welcome to stay too, even though her instincts of wanting to separate Asami and Mako are still there. And there's a moment where we see it's like, of course you can both stay, but then as soon as they go off and hug each other, she's still got a little bit of a look of like, oh, which is again just like in retrospect is like, jealous of who exactly there. Anyway, the yeah, so but things are not good. We have Lynn also saying she's going to resign from the police force because Tarlock is right. She did fail, which, yeah, I mean, she kind of failed a second time now, right? Which, again, is like, we understand she's up against a more serious threat than anyone really believed was possible, but again, that's kind of on her, right? It's her job. But Tenzin wants her to not give up, but she's not giving up. She's just saying, oh, well, I can no longer pursue this within the law. I have to become outside the law. And that's where we finish this episode. So with Asami having firmly committed herself to the side of the good guys, even against her own father, and also demonstrating, A, that she's a badass with self-defense, now has an electric glove, and can drive race cars. Right? Pretty good. All right, so let's leave it there, and I will talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes. And then next Sunday, we will continue with Episode 8, When Extremes Meet.